Okay, welcome everybody. Today we are going to cover Skylight 101, and generally this lesson was designed for a really deep dive. So today we are only going to cover section 1 and a little bit of section 2. And basically it's going to be the general types. So I'm going to go up here to this screen, and so basically trade spots. Maybe you can run the mouse. So basically, there's a lot of different types of skylights. Okay, there's a dome skylight, which is also called a bubble skylight. These are called curb mount skylights. So you have a dome, you have flat glass, which is flat glass, and then you have operable skylight. Operable skylight can be a manual operable where you have a pole that you hook onto it and you crank, or it could be an electric where you have a wall-mounted switch or a remote control to open and close it. Another type of skylight that's very similar is going to be a circular skylight. The ones that we make have a fiberglass curb, and they're very similar to what's called a self-flashing skylight. These are designed, let me roll back. These are designed to mount on a curb. A curb is a wood box. Go grab me the sample over there on the counter, please. Yeah. It's got the wood curb. So these are designed to be mounted on a wood curb. These are designed to be self-flashing and go right on the roof deck. So again, circular fiberglass frame. This is an aluminum self-flashing skylight. Thank you. Yeah. So generally, the curb mounted style will have this on the roof, and of course there's a roof here, and this has proper flashing and whatnot. But basically, it's going to be a 2x4 or 2x6 or 2x8, whatever piece of wood on edge. So this gives you the height you need to get away from the roof plane, and then the skylight basically just sits on there. Very simple design. This design has been around for, 30 years or more. So anyways, it sits on there, and basically you screw it from the outside. Very simple design. It's important that you put a big fat layer of silicone, or that you use a foam tape, because it's very easy to have a curb, because it's wood, and it's very easy that it has a warp in it. It's very easy that it has a knot, and if you put this foam tape, it's going to seal a lot better and not have problems. The general problems you have with this type of install is that people will hear wind when the wind blows, and that's because you didn't do a good job installing. It's on this type of skylight and all the other types of skylights we do, your first big job is to make sure you do a masterful installation from curb to skylight, and that means either the foam, it means silicone, it means flashing. You need to do a good job there, because if you don't do that, it's not going to work out well. So very simple skylight, basically fits like the lid on a shoebox. Very simple. Notice there's a gap around here. This is standard. Okay, you have enough gap to basically stick your thumb in there. And why is that? Well, because today you install this, and then tomorrow the customer gets a new roof. Wow, what do they do? Because now they have to stick flashing in here, step flashing usually. So this little bit of a gap makes it easier for them to replace their roof. Also, when you do a warehouse and you have 100 all skylights all the same size, and you measure those, they're not all the same size. So this little bit of a gap gives you a little bit of clearance, because the wood is warped, any number of reasons. It helps with the install later on. Okay.
Your self-flashing doesn't need a curb though, right?
Self-flashing, I don't have a model of it. The self-flashing, correct, does not need a curb. The self-flashing basically has, this part is aluminum, and it's part of the skylight, and then has a flange right here. And basically you set it over the opening and you screw it down like this. Now, of course, you put your silicone first and then you screw it down. So that applies to this circular and the self-flashing as well. It's pretty rare that we are going to be installing these. you're gonna do 100 of these to every one of these. Okay, the next type of skylight is, roll down a little bit so we can see the name of this. It's called the walkable skylight. This is, go to view, page layout, and do a single page view. Maybe view here. Try full screen. It didn't do anything. All right, anyways, we have walkable skylights. These are very popular in very affluent neighborhoods, okay? So they have, generally they're gonna have a basement, a fancy basement, and they wanna get natural lighting in there. So they'll do a skylight that you can actually walk on. The glass will be like this thick and will be about 20 or 30 pounds per square foot. It's gonna be really heavy, and often it's gonna be textured. And that presents many challenges for installs, but they want it, we'll do it. Another type of skylight is a hatch skylight. So if you have a rooftop deck, you might want a hatch skylight that lets light in and opens up. That's fairly popular. Okay, go to page 3. Another type of skylight is called a tandem. A tandem is basically 2 skylights in one, which is basically this design with another skylight. This design is a little bit antiquated and does not perform very well because this area right here could be a problem area. You have to seal it very well because it's very easy for water to get in there. So a little bit of an old design. Cluster skylight, another poor performing skylight. These are often seen like in old malls, and basically it's kind of a take on this, but there's a lot of them. So you have so many joints and opportunity for water to get in, it's almost ridiculous. We repair a fair amount of these. It's not our favorite. We would rather replace this with a large structural skylight, but sometimes their budget doesn't work. Often the shop will make a lot of lenses and we'll go and replace the lenses as part of the tune-up or whatever it needs. Another type of skylight, tubular skylights. Tubular skylights are very inexpensive skylights, and basically because they usually start out about that big to about that big, so it's very easy to cut a hole in your roof this big. It's very easy to do a tube coming down to your ceiling and then mount kind of a, not really a fixture, but mount a lens on the inside. So that's the beauty of it. It's super easy to install. It costs you $300 and maybe, I don't know, $300 to install it if you hire somebody. But it's a really crappy design because it's only this much light. And the second you make a bend, it cuts it in half, So we've done, when these first started, we used to install them. And we've had jobs where that run is 20 feet, commercial job, 20 feet. And then there's air conditioning ducts, water pipes and different things, and they go like this, and when the light gets to the end, there's no light, and the customer will be complaining, what's up? And it's because of all the pipes and all the transitions. Now, that's even with there being a mirror coating on the inside, but once you start making bends, the light starts to go away. So it's kind of a nice idea if it's in like your hallway and grandma's house and she wants a little light, and the run is very short, great, but it's not the best of situations for commercial. Okay, canopies. We do a lot of canopies. Kind of hard to see here, but it's kind of a circular canopy. This is one we did last year, and we're doing another one pretty much just like it this year with single pane lamy and many different colors. Very interesting job here in Denver. Special skylights. Architects love to do cool things with skylights. You'll see one of the things that our employees like is the skylights are really cool. Very seldom are they boring. Sometimes they are, but they're often really cool because architects put money in cool things that people see from the road, people can enjoy when they're inside. This one's for a church in Kentucky, and it's hard to see here, but this is the steel frame in our shop. And here is the skylight ready to be hoisted in place, and there's the skylight there. It's much bigger than what it looks like, and it was quite the challenge. Drafty would love this skylight. Okay, then we get to the meat and potatoes of our work. We have basically two types of structural skylights. Okay, a structural skylight means that in the opening, this is a very small opening, you're gonna have some sort of aluminum in the middle of the opening, and that's the structure. Think of skeleton. So a structural skylight has a skeleton that's in the opening. A curb mount has no skeleton. When you look out the opening of this thing, you don't see any metal. All you see is the glazing, because generally they're gonna be smaller. Structural skylight is quite big, can be quite big, and you need a skeleton to hold the glass. So generally you have a frame like so, and then you set your glazing or your glass. There's another kind of variety, and it's called, can you give me that wood thing? It's called an applied system. An applied system is basically has no structure. An applied is applied on top of an existing structure. So in this case, this is steel. So the customer, this is in Breckenridge, so the customer had, I think it was a pool underneath or a gymnasium, I'm not sure. And so they had a steel structure, so we came in and put our applied system on top that has virtually no strength, but they had the strength below. So it's technically a structural skylight, but they provided the structure, okay? But it's, in essence, it's very similar. The installation process is very similar. Okay, skylights. Did you hand me that desk model? Okay, please. Skylights. There is a lot of, here's the standard components for a structural skylight. So forget about this piece of plastic, forget about this piece of wood. These are the general components. There's actually very few parts and pieces to these skylights, but they're combined into many different shapes. One of the simpler ones is called a single slope. Okay, you're gonna learn that skylights have a lot of names. So this is called a single slope. Some people call it a lean-to. Some people call it a single pitch. There's a lot of weird names, but here we call it single slope. Okay, so it has one slope going down. Now on that single slope, if you think of this being the single slope, you can also put a gable on it. You put a gable on it. A gable is something on the side, and this could go up against the wall. It could be all by itself on the roof. There's many ways to do this. Then you have a ridge skylight. A ridge skylight is basically two of these going the other way. Well, one way, one the other way. And then you could do a gabled ridge where you put gables on it. It could be one, it could be two. Then you have a hipped ridge. A hip ridge has a compression ring right here that takes all these rafters going into it. It's a nice clean transition. And then this design is very similar to a pyramid. Here we call pyramids, it could be a 4-sided pyramid, which is kind of the conventional. It could be a 10-sided pyramid. Technically that would be called a polygon, or 10-sided polygon. But for ease here, we call it a 10-sided pyramid. I don't know if that's technically correct, but so pyramid, this could be a 5-sided pyramid, a 6-sided pyramid, or a polygon. Then you have your circular skylights. Now notice this circular skylight is different from the other one, where this one is going to be bigger and has structural elements in it. So it's a structural circular skylight. And then you have curved skylights, which are called vaults. So you could have a half vault, which is half of a circle, or a low rise, which is just part of it. These are easier to install than these typically. So these are very popular. They were more popular back in the day, maybe 20, 30 years ago. So currently we end up replacing a lot of these with a design that looks like this. This design is more economical than this, because on this design, you have to get your metal bent and on this one, it's easier to use high-performance glass. Where here, you almost always have to use some sort of plastic, whether it's polycarbonate or acrylic. It's generally quite expensive to use curved glass. You can use segmented glass, but generally you do that on a very large structure. So, I think that covers the pages on here. Any questions? Okay, so a lot of skylights will use combinations of these shapes. Okay, you can do a lot of interesting things. Now this lesson has some more advanced. Oh, there's also, I don't know how this ended up here, but there's also a greenhouse. Greenhouses are more advanced. They're a little bit difficult to install. Anyways, this lesson is like 22 pages long and has some more advanced things, but I want to cover some of the frame materials before I finish it up. What we use is two types of aluminum. One is called clear anodized and one's called dark bronze anodized. And there's actually a third that's called mill finish. Mill finish is the color of aluminum as it comes from the mill. So when they make it, this is the raw material, the raw aluminum. A lot of people will call this silver one mill finish. It's not. This is clear anodized. There's a difference. You can kind of see the difference. This has a more satiny look. Mill finish can oxidize, and when aluminum oxidizes, it gets like a white coating. And that's the reason you will never find it exposed on our skylights. You'll see either clear or this dark bronze. Now, there's also many other options for finish. You can get a custom powder coat or a liquid paint, different things. But normally we'll do these two finishes and maybe a custom powder coat. We won't get into powder coat today. But the interesting thing about these materials that it's a chemical process that's basically etched into the aluminum. And that's great because there's no paint to fade. So we've all seen paint, a darker colored paint that's been outside for 20 years, it's gonna fade. So this material doesn't fade, it does weather, so it can get a lot of pollution and dirt on it, but if you polish it up like you know, carefully, like you would your car, and wax it, you're gonna restore it back to the original color. Now the issue with this material, because the color is inside the aluminum, is if you scratch it, you'll see that mill finish aluminum. So you have to be really careful when you're handling this in the field, because if you scratch it, it becomes very difficult to touch up. You can touch it up if you damage this darker material. You can touch it up with a permanent Sharpie, and that looks pretty good. You could paint it, but it's never gonna look as good as the original stuff. So be very careful when you handle this. It's a lot easier to protect it than it is to touch it up. This material, if it scratches, it's the same color, but it's still a scratch. You're gonna see it. So same deal, you wanna protect it. The shop will put a blue protective film on here to help out, and then peel that right before you install it. Any questions?
Can you go over the material components there?
Yeah, I was planning to.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna switch gears here. Okay, so that covers the basics, the very, very basics. Thank you.